friends, welcome back to the Crow Boutique. My name is Courtney Herrera, and this is my channel where I talk all about my life as a psychic medium, as well as my life as a professional clinical herbalist and aromatherapist. And if you are joining me today, I'm going to talk a little bit about my day. I did some in-person readings today, which I do typically on Tuesdays. It had been a few weeks because I had gotten a pretty nasty cold from my adorable little germ bucket humans, my kids. And so I had actually missed the past 2 weeks, and this week we made up for it for sure because we had a series of 4 readings today, which is a lot. So whenever I do readings and then I come on here and talk to you guys about them, I don't ever share like any identifying information. So if you ever do have a reading with me, please know that. And if you don't want me to share any of your information, like not talk about it at all, I won't. So let me just get to the page here for the readings that I did today. Okay, so I actually had a pretty good day today. I got to work at about like 9:15ish, and I had 3 readings before lunch, which is unheard of. Usually I have readings after lunch. But this time I had actually 3 people that came in, or 4 people that came in for readings, and 3 of them were before lunch. So the first reading that I had was this lovely young lady, and we did a half-hour reading. So if you ever hear me talk about how I talk to like 6 or 7 people with somebody, typically that's because I've done an hour-long reading. If I talk to 1, 2, maybe 3 people with somebody, that's typically a half-hour reading. And that's kind of the difference with the in-person readings, is that you'll get more information, obviously, in the time allotted if you do an hour-long reading in person. Now, when I do my readings online through Zoom or on the computer, however you want to do it, we can do it Zoom or Skype or Messenger, any of those things. I don't actually set a time limit on my personal readings outside of the shop. These reviews that I do on Tuesdays are specifically for the readings I do in person at the Shining Lotus Metaphysical Store here in Denver, Colorado. So if you are in Colorado and you would like an in-person reading, that is where you can find me. You can find me there on Tuesdays, and I am happy to do a reading for you. That being said, any other day of the week, I'm happy to do a reading for you via Zoom in the privacy of your own home. So just, reach out to me with the links below. You can either book an appointment through Etsy, or you can call me or send me an email, and I would be happy to set you up with that. So back to the readings that I did today. I had a lady come in first thing this morning, and she was just absolutely lovely. She was bubbly and bright and just had the best energy, absolutely lovely energy. And the first person that she had come through, I wasn't really sure if I was getting it right, because it was a young man in kind of like in their early teens, or in their teens or their early 20s. And I couldn't really place the age, because this person had just done like so much in their short little life that it felt like they were much older than that. But it was like a youthful spirit. So I wasn't really sure where to place the age, because for me it felt more like somebody who is somewhat established in a career, like 20 or 25. But turns out that it was actually a much younger person. So what I wrote down, what I had come through, was a young male, early 20s or teens, sudden or unexpected passing in a tragic car accident. So, and then I said cousin or brother. So I wasn't really sure. It felt kind of like a brother, but not exactly. And that actually gives me a really good point to explain a little bit about how this works for me. When I do a reading, it's not like somebody comes and talks to me the way I'm talking to you right now through the camera. There's not words. So when I do reading, spirit comes to me and gives me impressions and feelings from my own life experience, and then I have to translate that into, your message. So a lot of times what can happen is things get lost in translation. This reading, though, was incredibly clear. She had the clearest reading I've done in such a long time, and I think it's because I had a little bit of a break. But it turned out that this was in fact her cousin. So I wrote all this down. She confirmed it for me. And that he had passed in a car accident. And I said, he feels older than that. It feels like he's done so much in his life that he feels older than that. And she's like, well, he actually already had been a professional sports person, and he had already gotten sponsorships for that. He already had his own clothing line. And I thought this kid was in his 20s. This kid was 14 years old. Okay. I mean, it is tragic that he passed that young. Absolutely. I feel so deeply sad for his family. That being said, it's almost like he knew it, that he knew he didn't have much time because he did more than most of us adults have ever done. I mean, he really lived like full force, which I thought was really cool. And it was so sweet to see this woman during this reading. And it was almost like she was there with him again for a little bit. And it meant the world to me to see that, because when she came in, she was bright and bubbly. She had just beautiful energy, but I could tell she was really hoping to hear from somebody, and it was him. It was him that she was hoping to hear from. So that was really nice. And then the next person that came through for her, all that I was getting is just like this feeling in my throat, like just this icky feeling in my throat, like it couldn't, not that it couldn't breathe, but almost like a dry, just not a comfortable feeling and some pressure. And I said, it feels like some kind of cancer or something in this area. I wrote down older woman, possibly a grandmother. And then I said thyroid/throat and turns on faucet / moves things. And so it actually turns out that this woman's grandmother had passed after having her thyroid removed. And not directly after, but she had had her thyroid removed and then had passed sometime later. And this woman has been experiencing this phenomenon where she'll be laying in bed in the middle of the night and her faucet will turn on. And it's one of those faucets that you touch, the touch faucets. And so she said that she thought the faucet was broken and she replaced it, and then it would happen again. And I told her, your grandmother is basically telling you, you can fix the sink as much as you want. It's going to keep happening because it's me doing it. So her grandma basically like came through just to take credit for messing with her, which I absolutely love. She was so cheeky and just the sweetest energy. I loved having her come through. I thought it was a wonderful reading overall. And then the last person that came through for this particular woman was actually a child that she had lost before giving birth. So she had had a miscarriage, a pregnancy loss. And I actually wanted to sit with you guys for a little bit today and talk about what happens when you have a pregnancy loss. As far as my experience as a medium is concerned, I understand and I appreciate that everybody has different worldviews, different religions, different beliefs. I don't want to convince anybody of anything or try to prove, God's existence or non-existence. I will say that I do readings for people often, and a lot of times when somebody's had a pregnancy loss, whether it be a miscarriage or an abortion or, some other tragedy, that these spirits do come through and they do communicate. And as far as I know, every single child that's ever existed has a spirit, and when they do pass, whether it be before or after birth, they do end up on the other side with people that we love. So I just hope that it brings some peace. I know it's difficult to quantify this information because I'm a medium and I don't have scientific evidence for you, and I'm so sorry. As somebody who has suffered a loss myself, it is something that I take peace in knowing. But in my experience, there's never been somebody who has had a pregnancy loss that, number one, didn't hear from their child during their reading, and number two, that didn't get a message of peace. If they did get a message from their child, that they didn't get a message of peace from the child. So I think it's important for people to know, because there are so many of us mothers out there grieving, that when you do lose a child, in my experience as a medium, regardless of how you feel about it, in my experience, those children do exist on the other side, and they continue to grow into larger children so they can interact with the physical world in some ways. Now, these children, these innocent little babies, they never have to suffer through the world. So I was explaining to my client today that although it's tragic for us, absolutely it is tragic for us when we find out that a pregnancy isn't viable, or we lose a pregnancy, or any kind of miscarriage situation. It's devastating, it's tragic, and I feel so deeply for women who go through this and don't talk about it. But I do think it's really important to recognize that from the spirit of this child's perspective, this baby's perspective, they spend every moment of their life on this earth within their mother's womb. And being in their mother's womb means that they never, ever feel the suffering that comes with being out in the world. And their entire lifetime, the only sound they hear is their mother's heartbeat and like stomach moving. The only thing they ever feel is warmth and safety and love. They never have to deal with anything uncomfortable or painful because they are protected completely and wholly within the mother. And although it is so horribly tragic for us to lose these children, absolutely, it is a beautiful thing to know, at least for me it is, that they never have to suffer through what we do, you know? And I do believe that they are in a better place on the other side. So even though it's difficult for us, I hope that in as many words as I can say, that you know that someday you'll be reunited again. You will be together again. And they're not suffering. They never suffered because they were with you the whole time. The whole time you were their entire universe. And so now they are on the other side with the people that love you and care about you. And they will continue to grow on the other side and learn and play. And they become guides for our other children if we have them, or they become guides for ourselves. And it's a really beautiful gift. And I know that it doesn't always help to hear these things, but I'm just hoping that somebody out there hears this and knows, like, 100%, as far as I am concerned, as far as my experience in every single reading that I've ever done goes, when a pregnancy loss has occurred for whatever the reason might be, that child still exists and is whole, healthy, and at peace on the other side. I have never encountered anything else, period, ever, when it comes to these children. They are always in the same state on the other side, which is a state of perfect peace, love, and harmony and bliss. I will definitely put a trigger warning on this video, so I hope that you guys paid attention to that if you got this far. I definitely did not mean for this to turn into a rant about pregnancy loss. I just felt so deeply today because she was so shook at the idea that this child had come through, because it wasn't even long enough, the pregnancy wasn't far enough along for her to know whether it was a boy or a girl. And so when I told her there's a little girl on the other side, and this feels like there's a lot of heaviness and sadness to this, like this was somebody that you loved and lost before you almost even met them. And she's like, that was a pregnancy loss. And I said, did you know that it was a girl? And she said, no. And I was like, well, it is. So, and she's like, I always felt like it was a girl. And that was it. That's all it took. And then we were both crying. And I'm not going to lie, you guys, I cry all the time in my readings. I'm always saying, oh, I don't ever cry. I cry constant. I am a crier, okay? Because the thing is, I'm not complaining. I enjoy the work that I do. I feel like I get to help people in ways that other people maybe can't. But dealing with the grief of another human being sitting across the table from you and looking them in the eye and saying to them the words that they need to hear, the medicine that they need to hear from spirit, is a very heavy kind of work. It is a beautiful kind of work. It's very rewarding. I wouldn't want to be doing anything else. But to sit face to face with somebody and really deal with their grief, you know, that it takes a toll. And then additionally, when it's somebody who has had a pregnancy loss like myself, or who has lost their grandfather like I have, or has lost, you know, all these people that you might lose, a young friend or whatever, or somebody that got lost in a similar way to somebody that I loved, it can be very triggering. And so that brings me to like another point about doing these readings, because sometimes people ask me, like, how do you not just cry all the time, you know, dealing with all this grief? And I will tell you that there's this really interesting phenomenon that happens with spirit, where when I'm doing a reading, occasionally I will crack and cry. It really doesn't happen that often, but I do cry. I say all the time, but I do cry. But there is like this phenomenon that happens, it's called blocking. And it's almost like they cut me off from my heart so that I don't feel what I'm saying. Because if I were to feel it, I wouldn't be able to say it to the person that needs to hear it. And so spirit works in a very efficient and gentle way. I feel that spirit is always bringing the most healing messages through in the most gentle possible way. And sometimes hearing something about somebody that you didn't even know would be on the other side. You know, you thought maybe it was like a clump of cells, and then that was it, and that they didn't even have time to get a spirit, for instance. And a lot of people think that about early pregnancy loss. And then to find out that there's a full-blown spirit child on the other side is quite jarring. And to be in the room when somebody experiences that, or to be in the room when somebody experiences someone that they've been grieving for a very long time, letting them know that they're okay, definitively, like they typically give like a lot of proof that it's them. Usually for me, it's the way that they passed. But in all that, there is a lot of it's heavy work and it is exhausting. And so I just hope that everybody understands where I'm coming from, and that I'm not trying to trigger anybody. I'm not trying to prove anything. I am just trying to do as much good as I can while I'm here, because there is so much healing that this world needs. And I am begging you all, whoever you are, if you have a gift or you suspect you have a gift, please take the time to develop and use that gift, because we need your medicine more now than ever. And a lot of us are just really tired. We're really tired. I mean, I look extra tired because I literally did 4 readings today and I woke up super early. I did not sleep well, just like all of it, you know, together. But I mean, spiritually, a lot of us are tired, and we need you. We need your medicine. We need what you're bringing. And not everybody's going to be a psychic medium, obviously. That would get boring, right? Some of you are intuitives. Some of you are empaths. Some of you have other gifts that are yet to be defined. And I am just asking, for the sake of all of us and the greater good and the whole that is humanity, if you could please just try your best to embrace and develop your gifts, because it's like we're working with a skeleton crew. Anyway, that was my rant. So, point being, if you have suffered any kind of pregnancy loss, wherever, for whatever reason in a pregnancy, I just hope that you know, in my opinion, that that child is still out there, and that you are still very much connected to them, and that they are with you 100% of your life. And I do believe that they're some of the first ones that show up when we do get ready to go ourselves. So it was an interesting, I'm glad that that baby came through today, so that I actually had the talking point that I'm having with you. Like, what happens if you have a miscarriage or a pregnancy loss? What happens to that spirit? And it's the same thing that happens to any other spirit. They go home. They go home. You don't have to worry about them being stuck in some kind of limbo or eternal suffering. They go home. And they watch over you. They watch over your family. They watch over the people that you love. So I just hope that brings a little bit of peace to some of you who might be grieving. And those of you, even if it's, you know, been 20 years, like, there might be some healing to have had there. So I just hope that that helps. But that was my first reading today. And that was just the first one. I mean, I don't know if that's, you know, it feels like a lot, but I did have 4, so I'll just touch briefly. It won't be as in-depth because that one was kind of the one I wanted to dive into. But I will say that the next reading that I did was a lovely lady, and she actually had some ancestors come through. And what's interesting about this, I won't share her identifying information, obviously, but she is adopted. And the 2 women that came through immediately, I wrote this down, okay? I said, 2 people together, parent and child relationship, 2 female, mother, daughter, adopted. So I said those words to this lady, and she was like, oh my God, I think that is my biological grandmother and great-grandmother, because I have just reconnected with my biofam, and it's, I mean, you wouldn't know that I was adopted. So she was really kind of shook up a little bit with that one. And then we talked a little bit about this other obscure character. And the reason I want to talk about this is because a lot of people think that when you go into a reading, you're just going to talk to the people that you have recently lost and are currently grieving. And that is not always what happens. Today was an interesting example of that, because I had a lot of this happen where it was either ancestors, somebody who had passed a long time ago, or in this instance, somebody who is loosely related to the person, but is not actually family or a very close friend. And this person was from my client's childhood. So I wrote down older woman, prolonged illness, chest, throat sensations, because I was getting some stuff in here. It felt really dry and kind of like burny, almost like, I mean, I already kind of have like a voice thing going on, but it was more pronounced than that, and much more like energetic. It wasn't really physical. And then I put relative ? No. And then I drew like a mantle and some pictures. And for me, that's my symbol that somebody's really proud of you. And I could not for the life of me figure out who this person was, because they weren't giving me anything else to go on, and they're not directly connected to the person. So when somebody's not directly connected to you through ancestry or a very close relationship, it is difficult for me to identify the relationship on the other side. And so I just told her, I'm like, I don't know who this is. I'm so sorry. She's treating you like you're her child, but she's not related to you in any way. And it turned out that it was her voice coach from when she was a very small child. And I just thought it was really interesting. And it reminded me, when I ask people at the beginning of a reading to keep an open mind on who they're going to hear from, I need to take my own advice. Because sometimes people will come through that I'm not expecting, and there's no way that I'm going to know what the relationship is. And I just tell them what I'm getting. And that's enough. You know, sometimes I can't confirm exactly who it is, but that's for you. That's for you to know. I don't need to know. I just take the messages. So I just thought it was really kind of cool that somebody so obscurely, you know, from her past came through, and she was really happy to have her come through. She's like, I think about her all the time. And then the last person that she had come through was actually her grandfather. And I thought it was really sweet because I asked her, I was like, do you find pennies everywhere all the time? She's like, yes, I do. I said, did you find one today? And she's like, yes, I did. And I told her that this is her grandpa sending her these pennies and dimes. And so she explained to me that she was literally getting dressed to come to the reading, and a penny fell out of her pocket. So she picked it up and put it back in her pocket. And then she was getting out the front door, and she heard something hit the ground. She turns around, there's a penny behind her, and she literally found like 6 pennies on the way to the reading. And so it was just a really, like, I got goosebumps. It was a little bit spooky, but I was so happy to like be able to validate for her that that's who's coming through. That does not happen very often for me. I don't get like these little details that are going to validate everything for you. Typically it's more, I know how they passed and kind of what their relationship was to you, and then we go from there. It is a very rare occasion where I get such specific information that I can positively identify a relative. I wish that that was the case. It just unfortunately doesn't really work that way. And I refuse to add things or take things away from my readings or pretend like something's happening that's not. So although that was a really special validation for her, that's not something that you should normally expect in a reading with the genuine medium. If people are giving you like tiny little signs, or you're like thinking in your mind, bring up this color or something when you come into a reading with me, 9 times out of 10, it's not going to work out, because my guides know that I do not like to be tested. I don't like to prove people, because like I offer a 100% money back guarantee on my reading. If you're not happy, you can just have your money back. You don't have to, you know, quiz me or get me to convince you. If you don't believe me, you don't believe me. But it is really difficult for me to come up with like a spoon or, you know, whatever signal that you have for your person on the other side, for the simple fact that I use a system of symbols to speak to the dead. And so when they start throwing in random symbols that might be what you're looking for, like the word that you're looking for or the name that you're looking for, it messes me up. Or it might be a symbol that I already use and means something else. So I can completely misinterpret that and give you the wrong message. So although I would love to actually be able to tell you like, it's your Uncle Jimmy and he brought a hat pin with him, that doesn't really work. So that's just something to keep in mind if you have a reading with me, that it is not a concrete science. This is an ethereal thing that I can't explain. I don't know how it works. I wish that I did so I could explain it better to you. But one thing is that occasionally we do get like super solid validation that this is your person. And then at other times it's more, you know how they passed, you know who the person was. I do my best and either you feel it or you don't. But I don't ever force anything, and I don't add anything or take anything away. So, but you guys are going to love this. So at the very end of this, and I'm not going to talk anymore about the other readings I did today, just because I am so tired after a day of doing readings. But the last one to come through for her, I thought was a cat at first. I'm like, there is some kind of weird animal here. I thought it was a cat. I don't think it's a cat. It's looking at me almost like a human. It's got this weird like hair thing going on with its face. It almost looks like it has bangs. And she's like, oh my God, that's my dog. So she had this little, and she showed me a picture when we were done. It's a little Tibetan terrier, and I can't remember its name, but it just came bounding into the room like this happy-go-lucky little puppy dog. And it was the strangest thing because it was acting kind of like a cat. You know, it was like rubbing up against your legs like cats do, and it was like kind of standoffish like cats are. And so I'm just like, there's this random animal that I think is a dog, but it's acting kind of like a cat, and it looks a little weird. And so then she showed me after our reading the picture of her dog, and we laughed so hard because I couldn't describe what this animal looked like. And I wish I had a picture of it to show you guys. but I could not describe it. I'm like, it has like a weird hair thing around its face. It's got like a, I don't know, like it almost looks like a bob cut, you know, and it was so funny, you guys. She showed me this picture of this dog after our reading was done, and it, no joke, had bangs straight across the forehead and then ears that made like a Pulp Fiction bob. It cracked me up. It was so cute. So that was one of the readings. And then I had two others, and they were really good readings, and one of them was more like ancestral, so it was more talking to the ancestors than anybody that they're currently grieving. And then the other one was a little bit more heavy. And because of that, I don't really want to share about it, because this one in particular was a very difficult reading. So I'm just going to keep the other two to myself. But I just thought I'd come on and give you guys a little bit of a review of kind of how my day went today. I'm hoping that I will get more consistent about filming content and then posting content. So stay tuned. I appreciate you guys coming by and seeing me. Don't forget that you're all beautiful, sacred, beloved beings. And I'm so happy you exist in my world. I hope that you'll book a reading with me soon. Have a great time. I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.